Amazon has everything for back to school. Zebra lunchbox? Check. Cool Adidas gear like t-shirts, shoes, and backpacks? Check. Triceratops folders and pencils? Check. Laser Cat t-shirts? Check. Get your back-to-school shopping done now at Amazon.com/back-to-school and enjoy free shipping on millions of items. No need to leave your home or hassle with crowds. Amazon.com. No better place to get everything back to school from A to Z.
Good morning and welcome to Unlimited Realities. I'm your host, Lisa Zimmer, and I'm so blessed to have the two guests that I have today to enlighten you on what their wisdom and their books have to offer you as an audience. I'm really gifted today because sometimes it works for me and sometimes it doesn't work for me. But my intention is to create an atmosphere with every show and an energy. And sometimes it works, but sometimes I have last-minute, glitches where I have to put somebody else in a spot. And today it worked. And both of my guests have such a wonderful essence, energy, wisdom, light book. Highly recommend both of them. We're going to begin today with my first guest, Jim Phillips, who wrote The Key of Life, and we're going to talk to him and discuss his wonderful, wonderful book. But I find it also very timely because I'm really touched, and although I sound pretty grounded to all of you, maybe a little grounded anyway, I was kind of an emotional wreck this morning. My son's 18, and we have lots of loved ones and kids and friends of his who are attending FSU. And last night there was a gunman who went off in the library. He shot 3 kids. Right now, I just looked. We still don't know the status of 2 of the kids. I think one is okay, getting treated. The other one, they're not releasing information, or at least I haven't been able to find it. Maybe you guys know more. But I'd like to start today's show off with an energy and a prayer. These kids are all of our kids, and we need to really put some emphasis on the safety of what we have in our future. And if we could all just put an intention of love and light out for this child that's in critical condition, who was a victim today from a violent act and a shooting at FSU. I don't know the name of the person, but if we could just spend a moment, I'm going to be silent for a few seconds here and just shed some silence and love and prayer and light so that this stuff stops, because this is hard, and this is hard. As a parent, as a citizen, this can't keep going on like this. So let's just take a moment and shed some light, shall we? And blessings and prayers for all those involved, all those affected, and may the healing begin. Amen. Now, without further ado, we step into introducing my first guest, Jim Phillips. Such a wonderful book, and I believe, Jim, you're listening to me on the other end there. Jim wrote The Key of Life, and the key of life is living in full expression. This is the kind of book that you can open to any page and be touched by its content. It's been written through an openness of spirit in all that is good, light, and love in the world. This is from Christian McCormick, founder of the Spiritual School of Intuitive Arts. Now, you know this is speaking my language. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my first guest, Jim Phillips, author of The Key of Life. Welcome, 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 Jim. Thank you so much for being my guest today. Thank you for being on Unlimited Realities, Jim. I love your book, The Key of Life. Let's dive in and start talking about it. Thank you for writing this book, Jim.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to share what I've come to understand and know.
Well, I found it such a beautiful read and so fluid. It just rolled. It was one of those books that I could go to and escape and just feel like that little warm candle inside burning that just felt like home. And I'm inquiring to you in your heart of hearts to ask what inspired you to write this book at this time, because I do find it poignant at this time in our life that we need more of this energy, essence, influence, resonance out there with all the crazies. So talk to us a little bit about what inspired this for you.
Well, the inspiration actually has been one that I have had for as long as I can remember during this lifetime. I have had this knowing that there was a message that was going to be coming through me. I wasn't sure how. I really wasn't sure what form it was going to take, didn't know what the title was going to be. And yet, as I was going through different phases of my life, and I'm talking about from when I was small up until this point, as I would go through different phases of life, things would happen. Things would put me in front of different people. I would find myself in different circumstances where I would be sharing things being information, wisdom, you can call it wisdom if you want, but that were beyond what I should have been talking about at that particular point in time. So that is what gave me that kind of knowing that something else was going on. And then it just became a matter of being really interested in human potential, human performance, questions like why are we here? And more specifically, why am I here? What is my purpose while I'm here? And I receive messages all the time. I take early morning walks, and as you read in the book, I refer to those times as being immersed in the silence of the dawn. And that's when I'm most connected, and I receive information that I can expand on. And then essentially I have to live it. I have to go through the experience of whatever it is that I'm being given so that I can share it from an experiential perspective. So it just got to the point where it had to be expressed. So the inspiration was all this information I was given. It was life experiences, but then actually putting it on paper, it got to the point where I could no longer withhold it. I don't want to say the pressure because it wasn't like that, but the nudging, if you will, was so strong that I was about to burst if it wasn't allowed to come out and be expressed. So here we have the book.
Wonderful. Well, what a great nudge. Because it's written in such a way. I was really blessed with both of you today because both of you have such an essence, both you and my next guest. It's just a beautiful truth, essence, authenticity that both of your books really just flowed. And you know, I always trust God's timing. It was at a time where apparently I needed the gentle approach. So I'm going through your book and I'm looking at your description of how to live in full expression, and I was reading it, and I'm you know, talking out loud to myself as I'm reading your book in agreeance. And how can you explain to our audience how they can live in more of a full expression of their lives?
When you asked me that question, a whole lot of things just came to mind for me. The one that I think is the most important is to be aware of who they are in the moment. Mm-hmm. I think we get too caught up in things that have happened in the past, and so we waste our present moment time over things that we no longer have any control over. Or we start projecting into the future, and we have worries and concerns about what we think is going to happen. And so, again, we lose that opportunity to be who we are in the moment. And living in full expression is being truthful to ourselves in each moment. It's about allowing the expression that desires to be expressed through us, and in fact is us, in the moment. It's just being real. It's being authentic. It's being truthful. It is following those nudges and inspirations that were given and allowing them to be that expression of who we are.
Okay, and that brings me to my next insight, which I loved your description of this. Let's talk about how when we do that, when we're living in full expression, we tend to live life more on an unconditional basis. And you discuss how people tend to live life conditionally. Can you discuss, and can we talk about a little bit what that looks like and what that means? What living conditionally versus living unconditionally looks like?
I think the easiest way for people to understand that is to go through an exercise, and that is to look at those things that you're doing during the day, those decisions that you're making. Are you making them based on how you truly feel, or are you making them based on how you think other people will feel or will react to you based on those decisions you make? And more often than not, what we find is that we're making decisions based on what society expects of us, or what other people expect of us, or because we feel that if we don't act a particular way, we won't fit in with whatever group we're trying to fit in with. And yet, our purpose for being here is to live from the truth of who we are. And it's not about doing things for the benefit of other people. It's about doing things for ourselves so that we can have the grandest experience of ourselves through all the things that are created in the course of our lifetimes to allow for that. And here's the paradox to that, and that is that when we live in full expression of who we are, when we're being truthful to ourselves, we're actually giving other people the greatest gift we can give them, which, number one, is seeing us in full expression, but it's also giving them permission to do the same. And it allows other people to see that they don't have to live lives conditionally. Now, this doesn't mean that we don't have responsibilities. I'm not talking about that. We all have responsibilities in life, and that's part of being here. But I'm talking about making decisions about things that we want to do that are heartfelt, that we're making because that's who we are, and not because somebody else has said you need to do this or you should do this, or there's going to be some punishment you're going to get if you don't do this, you don't do that. It's just about being real.
Right. And that probably is the one energy that comes through so consistently in the book is this authenticity. And it's just really takes you down to your core in getting real with yourself in regard to what do you want? What are you afraid of? What, it's literally looking at behind the curtain. So when you talk about enriching our lives and finding purpose and living in our full expression, you also discussed the principle of non-attachment. Now, in many times, that can be a very difficult aspect to tap into for people, because as they're starting to look at their purpose or their dreams or their full expression or goals or purpose, they have sometimes a vision of what that looks like, and they attach feelings or emotions or outcome to what that vision looks like. So then we pop in this little concept of non-attachment, and we try to master this approach of achieving what we are masterful at, yet also staying in this approach and perspective of non-attachment. Now, that is a masterful concept. Let's discuss non-attachment. How can we look at the principle of non-attachment and look at it for what it is without getting caught up in all the hoopla around getting where we're going or expressing ourselves or reaching a desired goal?
All right, so if you look at the whole idea of living in full expression, and I do want to point out that the title of the book, The Key to Life, Living in Full Expression, the word life is the acronym for living in full expression. So there is that tie-in there.
Wonderful.
So the whole idea of non-attachment is that we are not those things we do. We're not the things we acquire. We're not the accomplishments we have. We're not the other people in the world. And non-attachment means not identifying ourselves as any of those things. Because if you think about it, if we identify, let's just say I make a whole lot of money, and that's my primary focus is being a business person and making a whole lot of money. Well, a lot of people who made a whole lot of money during this recent recession, they lost a whole lot of money. And a lot of people lost their identity because that's who they felt themselves to be. And then all of a sudden what's left is just them. And if we can understand that just them or that just us is who we are, then we don't have, I'm not going to say we don't have the challenges and the difficulties, because that's a part of the process of being alive. Those are the things that help us expand our experience of ourselves. But if we're not attached to those things we do or acquire or achieve, then when they're gone, we still identify with ourselves. We still know that we have self-worth. We still know that we have our essence. The most difficult thing is when we look at non-attachment to relationships, because people will often say to me, well, what about your family? You love your family, you love your children, and that's true.